you mentioned about how the difference, obviously, you have your physical Qur'an, the Qur'an that we see in our shelves, and this is obviously like almost like a distillation of so many different levels, and this is what we have in front of us as the Qur'an. The question that we have from one of our audience was, given that the Qur'an was revealed in the Arabic language, does this present a disadvantage to non-Arabic speakers in terms of comprehending its meaning?
Languages are different, and Allah has used different languages, spoke different languages in His revelations. So it's not that Allah has only spoken in Arabic. He has spoken to nations according to their own language. The prophets also the same. We have hadith, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِاللِّسَانِ قَوْمِهِ. We have not sent any messenger unless he spoke in the same language of the people to whom he was sent. But there is something special in the Qur'an, and perhaps this is why Allah has spoken His last word, His last book, His last revelation in Arabic language. One of the things that we find about Arabic language is it's a very clear language. بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. Quran is very clearly said in Arabic. If you want to say it in other languages by translation, it may not be as precise and as clear as it is in Arabic. But even if the Quran was revealed in any other language, again we would have this problem that some people don't speak that language. If the Quran was not in Arabic, was in Persian, was in, French, was in English, was in German, again we had the same issue that what other people should do. But there is no solution here to speak a language that is common language, because it's not an option for us. We have to have one language, and many people would not know that language as their mother tongue. Now that we have to have one language, we don't have any way to accommodate all other languages at the same time. So which language we should choose? We should choose the language of the prophet and the nation to whom that prophet is going to preach. The Quran is a universal message, but it started with preaching the people in Arab Peninsula. لِتُنْذِرَ أُمَّ الْقُرَى وَمَنْ حَوْلَهَا. So the revelation was first introduced to the people of Mecca, which was Ummul Qura, and then حَوْلَهَا, around. So little by little, the circle of audience expanded. So we have to have one language. We have the language of the Quran, which is the natural choice, because the people who were addressee in the first place were Arabic speaking people. But also Arabic has this advantage that it's a language which is very clear, very structured. It has lots of rules, and therefore you don't need to, for example, have ad hoc decisions or exceptions too much. And it's the language that also seems to be the language of the people of heaven. So those who know Arabic, still they may need to improve their Arabic, but because many Arabic speaking people, they are not that familiar with the language of the Quran and with the way the Quran speaks, and especially some of the terminology, they may not be familiar. So it's not that Arabic speaking people necessarily understand everything about the Quran, because they also have to train themselves. And those who don't speak Arabic, they may have more difficult time in learning, but the advantage is that because they don't have any other experience of Arabic and they don't know any other usage of Arabic, therefore whatever they learn from the beginning can be Quranic. Therefore there will be less confusion by thinking that what they understand today is the same as what was understandable from the same word or same phrase in the past. So if someone is Arabic speaking, has to improve his Arabic. If someone is not Arabic speaking, still can use the translation, can benefit, but the best is to learn Arabic so that he or she can translate, can understand by himself or herself. But for the extra efforts that he make, extra time and energy that he spent, of course he will get more reward. His reward would not be like someone who has not made any efforts for learning Arabic. So Allah, in His comprehensive calculus, takes account of everything. If you have to do extra part, extra bit, then you would also receive extra reward.
For any follow-up questions on this specific question? We move on to the next one. Okay. So the next question, Sheikh, is quite a general question. Can the Qur'an interpretation be tailored for modern day? As when you discuss the freshness of the Holy Qur'an, there are many times people get an answer that they say you should look at the context of the verse in which this verse was revealed. Is this fair? As people tend to say, this is a direct understanding of the real Holy Qur'an message. Can a non-scholar glean anything apart from generic principles or values, or is that what the Qur'an is about?
Thank you very much. First of all, we can always have better interpretations. No one should think that there is no way to improve interpretation of the Qur'an. Even if the greatest scholar of a given age has made commentary of the Qur'an, it doesn't mean that this is the last and the best. There can be others that may add to this. So we should be always trying to get the best available, the best possible interpretation. And this is very important. The second thing is that even if you have the best interpretation today from the best exegete, the best mufassir, interpreter of the Quran, again, I believe that the Quran year by year seems to introduce new ideas to us, opens to us new ways of looking at the Quran, new ways of benefiting from the Quran. It's a river that you can always try to understand better, but also there is always new water coming to this. Maybe new ingredients, new dimensions. So not only we can have improvement in our interpretation, but I expect that there would be new things to actually understand and interpret. Quran seems to be disclosing itself more and more. Revelation seems to become greater and greater by year. So maybe there are things that are meant for us to understand that the people in the past, they were not able to understand. And there might be things in future that we may not have any clue now, but people in future would understand from the same Quran. So improvement of interpretation, but also expecting that the Quran actually would have more things to say. By the passage of time, Quran has more to offer. Not that what he has already offered and are fixed, we reflect on them and understand them more. This is possible, but there is also something more to come and offer.
Thanks, Sheikh.
Allah Hafiz.
Just any questions?
Just the RFI understanding more, is it limited to the ritual domain, or is it more of a
Can you hear that, Sheikh?
Now, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, come closer.
So in terms of finding more, understanding more about the Quran and improving interpretation, is it limited to the spiritual domain, or is there more sort of practical applications, let's say?
Yeah, very good question. So in order to benefit more from the Quran and understand more from the Quran, few things can help us. But it's not only one. All these few can help, and we should try to have all of them. One is more knowledge, more familiarity with the scholarship about the subject. So if you know more about Arabic, about aqaid, about philosophy, about Quranic sciences, about tafsir, when you go to the Quran, these would help you to understand better. But also there is another side which is very important, and that is to be spiritually prepared for going to the Quran, to be tuned to the Quran by living a life which is inspired by the Quran. The more I put the Quran into practice, the more I live by the standards of the Quran, the greater chance I have for understanding the Quran. If a person is involved in charity work and he is also a Quranic scholar, when he reflects on the Quran, he may understand things that the person who has not been involved in charity work would be able to understand. So based on your experience, for example, if you are a parent and you are working on parenting and you are studying on parenting, you may understand from the Quran something that other people may not understand. So there is such also possibility of growing and developing and therefore understanding new aspects of the Quran. So it's both a matter of theory and scholarship, and also a matter of spirituality and openness and humbleness.
And following on from this, looking at the interpretations, question 1, in terms of, you said we should be trying to filter out the best interpretations. Can you give us guidance on this? And secondly, how much should we be looking towards interpretations? How much should be intrinsic spiritual realization?
Sorry, the first part was about ordinary people understanding?
Yes.
Yeah. Every person can benefit from the Quran. Even we have seen non-Muslims who didn't know any Arabic and they just read translations of the Quran, which were not the best, which were not perfect, still they were benefited a lot by reading the Quran, to the extent that they were convinced that this is the word of God. So it's very important that every person tries, no matter how old he or she is, how educated he is, to go back to the Quran and try to be inspired. But at the same time, we should not take our understanding to be acceptable, to say my understanding is beyond question. No, we try to check with ulama, with the books on tafsir, whether my interpretation is correct or not. So sometimes you come across something that you find it very clearly in, and it's very obvious, and there is no need for interpretation. Everyone understands it the same way. Okay, so that's easy. But sometimes you may need to check if scholars have understood it in this way that you say or not. In both cases, it's a very good help for us to reflect on the Quran.
Anything to add on this? No? There's a specific, I had a couple of questions on specific verses from the Quran. Is it okay to answer these questions?
Yes.
So the first question was on the view on the verse in Surah An-Nisa, ayah 34. They know it's a heated question. My question is, surely even if, so it's talking about the so-called wife beating verse. Question is, surely even if it's a light beating or mentioned as a last resort, surely both are still not respectful to women. It's one of the parts of the Quran that confuses me a lot, even though I've read many works around it. I think it's easily abused because of the wording. I'm aware some people say it's not a literal beating, but the point is why there is explicit mention of how to deal with unruly women and not unruly men. It justifies a sort of social and gender hierarchy to people that are already sexist. It's a big heated question to start things up.
Yeah, there are different interpretations about this فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. So some people say فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ means beating, but not beating that would cause injury or would cause bruising. Just simple, like, sometimes even friends, especially in some cultures, when friends meet each other, sometimes, they hit each other, not a bad way. It's a kind of friendship. It's a kind of showing that they are very close to each other. Sometimes they beat each other. Sometimes they punch each other's body as a friendship. So some people say it's physical beating, but not something that causes injury or causes bruise. Just a kind of signal. This signal can be out of love. It can be a kind of warning signal. Like, for example, after Du'a Ahd, also in the morning, 3 times you hit your leg by your hand. You hit your leg by your right hand. You say, you ask Imam Zaman for ta'jil in faraj. But some people say فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ here doesn't come from dharb in the sense of beating. Dharb here means to turn away. إضراب, for example, in the Qur'an we have أَفَنَضْرِبُ عَنْكُمُ الذِّكْرَ صَفْحًا. Should we take away the dhikr, the reminder from you because you don't want to listen? So إضراب in Arabic sometimes means that you are dealing with something, but then you leave it and you go to something else. So it's the turning of attention. So some people say, like the late marhum Musawi Lari, who has many books, passed away a few years ago, you might have seen. He has books on aqa'id, on many things. So he says, وَضْرَبُوهُنَّ means if you see that your wife is not listening and you are not also able to come to an agreement, so just for some time, don't continue the discussion, don't try to solve the problem immediately. Do something else. Turn away, for example, till the things are a little bit relaxed, cooled down, and then you can go back and talk to each other or resume your normal life. So it's a matter of not beating. It's a matter of idrab in the sense of i'rad, as we say in Arabic, diverting your attention, turning towards something else.
Thank you, Sheikhna, for clarifying this. The next verse, the next one is actually a question. Since just me talking, you can hear voices from yourself.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
So my question is quite generic. I said, what do you understand by man arafa nafsa fal'arafa rabba? And is this related to ayah 53 in Surah Fussilat, سنريهم آياتنا في آفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنهم الحق أولم يكفي بربك أنه على كل شيء. That's the second question, but that question.
In the book Self-Knowledge, I have explained the meaning of man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu, and actually I have also mentioned the verse that you cited, سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم. So basically the idea is that we have two types of signs for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala available to us to reflect and contemplate on. The signs which we find in the external world, outside us, in horizons, looking at animals, at plants, at water, at stars, at planets. These are external signs of Allah. This is the ayat fil afaq. We call them al-ayatul afaqiyah. But also there are signs for Allah inside us. Wafi anfusihim, in their own selves. And this is why we believe that self-knowledge is very, very important, because self-knowledge is knowing Allah's signs inside ourselves. And actually Allah's signs inside us are not less or smaller than external signs. As again I have said in this book, Self-Knowledge, actually inside us is the greater world. Many philosophers and mystics have said that the world inside us is greater than the world which is outside us. With all its greatness, this physical world is not as important as a spiritual world inside us. And we have also a poem which is attributed to Imam Ali, but there is a discussion whether this was Imam Ali or another Ali ibn Abi Talib, which says, أَتَضْعَمُ إِنَّكَ جِرْمٌ صَقِيرٌ وَفِيكَ انْطَوَى الْعَالَمُ الْأَكْبَرُ. Do you think you are a small physical mass, physical object, while inside you has dwelled Al-Alamul Akbaru, the greatest world is inside you. Don't think you are little. Unfortunately, we many times only reflect and concentrate on our physical side, on our body only. Beauty of body, health of body, comfort of body. But soul is more important. Body is also important. We are not underestimating body. But our soul compared to our body is much, much more important. So, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. We will soon show them our signs in the horizons, means external signs, and in themselves, in their own self, which means the signs that are there in ourselves and which can be discovered through ma'rifatun nafs, self-knowledge. And if someone has proper ma'rifatun nafs, would certainly realize that we are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most knowledgeable, the wisest, and the most benevolent God. And this is why we have this hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man arafa nafsah faqad arafa rabbah ya arafa rabbah. There are two versions. Whoever has known himself has known his Lord. If you really know yourself, you realize that you are creation of such perfect God who has no limit in his knowledge and power and wisdom.
My second question was, what do you understand by istiqamah, which is coming up like in Surah Ayat 13, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And how can it be practical to have istiqamah? And is it the same as qiyam? When after dua iftitah it says, اللهم إلا تغفروا في هذا الشهر الشديد إلا من أخلص لك في صيام وقيام.
Istiqamah means to be persistent. This is condition of someone who is patient but active and patient. Sometimes someone is patient and does nothing. For example, he is ill. He says, I am just patient. He doesn't go to doctor. He doesn't take medicine, prescription. He says, I am patient. This is not patience. This is not sabr in the Quranic context. And istiqamah is even clearer. Istiqamah means you are persistent and consistent in your journey. You choose a destination and then a straight path to that destination and try not to deviate to the east or west. You choose the most straight path because the shortest is the one which is direct and straight. So, istiqamah means a traveler who has clear destination in mind and has chosen the best path tries to remain loyal and committed to the path, would not lean towards this or that, would not stop, would not go backward, would not deviate, keeps going. استقاموا على الطريق. This ayah is very beautifully explained what I said. استقاموا على الطريق means you are moving. You are on the path, you are on the road, but persistent. So, if you are persistent and consistent, little by little, you can move forward. But if you are going and stopping, or you are going sometime forward, sometime backward, or sometime you deviate, you are not going to reach. So, we should make sure that first, we are on the track, right track, على الطريقة, and second, we are persistent.
Any follow-up question on this? Okay. Again, Sheikh, this is an observational question.
Yes.
So, question is, many times in the Holy Quran, fire is mentioned.
Yes.
Is it always related to the physical fire, as in the literal meaning, or we see, or could it be something else, i.e. metaphysical?
Fire can be physical fire in this world. Fire can be fire in the hereafter, that we believe at least it is partly physical because we believe in ma'ad jasmani. We believe in the corporeal resurrection. So part of it is physical, but it's not only physical. For example, the Quran says the fire in the hell تَطَّلِعُ عَلَى الْأَفْئِدَةِ. It would even reach the hearts, the spiritual hearts. The physical fire can reach only body, cannot reach the spiritual heart. But the fire of the hell is not only physical, although it is physical. But sometimes also fire can mean something which is actually very good. Because fire sometimes stands for clearness, for light, for purity. For example, when Musa alayhi salam was traveling during the night with his family, as we find in Surah Taha, he noticed a fire, but that fire was a pleasant fire. فَقَالَ لَأَهْلِهِمْ كُثُوا إِنِّي آنَسْتُ نَارًا. He said to his family, please wait here. I have noticed a friendly fire. A fire that gives you comfort, pleasure. آنَسْتُ نَارًا. He doesn't say رَأَيْتُ نَارًا. So there was uns, there was familiarity, acquaintance, means nice and friendly fire. And you know that fire, which we also have it in the Bible, is the fire from which God spoke to Musa alayhi salam. The first revelation came to Musa there. That was from a bush, but it was not really a bush being burnt and producing fire. We have also, for example, physical fire to which Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown. But even that physical fire has understanding and listens to Allah's command. When Allah says, Ya naru kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim, O fire, be peaceful and cool for Ibrahim, the fire listened to this generative command of Allah, this amr takwini of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are different ways in which fire is used, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes it's negative, sometimes it brings pleasure, sometimes it brings pain, and sometimes it can be just general.
Questions from the ones that were sent in, that's me finished with them. So now it's down to the floor. If there's any questions that people have related to the theme specifically, but again, it could be general questions as well, of course. Anyone wants to start? Yes, sister.
How can we develop love for Quran, the heart and us?
How do we develop Quran, the love for Quran in the hearts of children?
Yes, very good question. I think the best introduction to the Quran for children can be through stories. We don't need to even read the stories right from the Quran, word by word, because that might be difficult for them to follow. There might be perhaps no clear flow in the translation. But what is important is that you yourself read in advance, then open, for example, the Quran, say, we want now to, for example, read the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, and then narrate the story based on the Quran, but maybe with additions that you find in the Qisasul Quran, in the books on the stories of the Quran, and focus on these stories that can be relevant to them, that can give them lessons, but in practice. Something that, for example, when you trust Allah, what happens to you? When you try to be helping people, what happens to you? When you are honest or dishonest, what happens? You don't need to directly give them moral lessons, but you can highlight moral lessons and then they will absorb it by themselves. And also, when they see you love the Quran, you respect the Quran, you talk about Quran being word of God, Quran being a manifestation of God, then inshallah, little by little, they love the Quran. But please don't mention anything from the Quran that they may not appreciate or understand or may be confused or may develop a sense of fear. For example, the Quran says, that you are going to be punished. Quran, it says, you are going to, suffer. These type of things is not good for children, in my humble view. Just mention positive things and encouraging things to their level, according to their capacity. Let them understand the beauty of the Quran. Let them enjoy the relevance of the Quran to their life. And then later they can read the entire Quran by themselves. So I don't advise that you review from the beginning to the end all the verses for the children, and try to explain. Because some of the verses are not relevant to them at that early stage. You have to start with the stories, in my understanding, and some of the general verses about aqaid and akhlaq. And then, inshallah, later they can study the Quran from cover to cover by contemplating on the meaning of the verses. Allah Hafaz, inshallah. Okay, I think we should, inshallah, maybe.
Yes, we'll take one more question, inshallah,
yes.
And then we will do inshallah.
Inshallah.
In addition to maybe ayat al-kursi, ma'udah, or what other surahs or ayahs or inside.
Sheikh, the question is, what are, apart from the Surah Al-Falaq and Nas, Ayat al-Kursi, these certain verses, is there any other verses that you recommend that can be recited more often?
For what?
On a daily basis.
For what?
Just as for dhikr.
For ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. For ourselves, it's very good if we read the Quran from the beginning to the end, so that we can cover, every now and then the whole Quran. But some verses you can keep repeating them because you find more kind of relevance to your life, more direct for you, more empowering you. These can be verses that, for example, we have in Salat, like Surah Hamd, Surah Qul Huwallah, Inna Anzalna, Ayatul Kursi, for Qul, Qul Huwallah, Qul Ya Ayyuhal Kafirun, Qul A'udhu Birabbil Falaq, Qul A'udhu Birabbil Nas, or some verses of the Quran, like, for example, Subhana Rabbika Rabbil Izzati Amma Yasifun, wa Salamun ala al-Mursaleen, walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In Surah Saf, these are 3 verses which are very important, and we are recommended to end our sessions with them. If you think that there have been things that may have darkened your heart, you say these words. So it's good if you choose some of the verses of the Quran when you read the Quran and take a note of them and read more often these words, and some of them you may find them very important for the level of life that you have. You can write them down and put them in a frame or put them in front of you on your computer as a screensaver. So any word that you find more attracted towards it can be good for you to invite you to the rest of the Quran. So appreciate these welcoming verses, follow them, and then inshallah you will enter into the whole world of the Quran.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Thank you so much for all of your words of wisdom. It's very much appreciated by all of us. I can definitely say that.